In July of 1998, the Alpha Team members of STARS were sent into the Arclay Mountains of Raccoon City after the Bravo team went missing, after being sent there to investigate possible acts of cannibalism. The survivors soon found themselves wrapped up in a plot that includes bioterrorism, a little bit of cloning, and of course, lots and lots of zombies. We're talking about Resident Evil. What's up, everybody, and welcome to 3VO, where we're all on the same team. I'm your host for today, Jordan.
And I'm your other host, Brenden.
And if you're new here, we are just two big old nerds that love video games so much that we just have to keep talking about it. So, if you two share that same slightly annoying passion for video games that we do, this is definitely the place for you. Today we'll be going over a brief history of the timeline for the Resident Evil series. But before we get into all of that, Brenden, how are you, my friend?
I'm tired.
We could almost skip the intro at this point and just be like, hey, we're tired. Anyway, and moving
on. Like, we don't have to exchange pleasantries. Just, I'm tired, you tired?
Yeah, I'm exhausted.
Great, okay.
Always.
So I just got back. I flew back from a business trip
That's
on
right,
Friday.
Yeah.
So I was out in Austin, Texas, which was actually a really great time. I didn't have to pay for like a single thing while I was out there.
Nice, there you go.
Yeah, it was crazy. I had a per diem for food and like Uber to take me anywhere, and like it was pretty lit. But I also feel like I didn't really get to see much of Austin just because I was like working.
You're there for work, so you didn't get to
like there for work.
And
yeah, so I mean I was like in the office, like in the actual office, for like 9 hours of the day, and then after work there was work events, so there was like no real time to like do or see anything really. I feel. Monday night when we flew, there was a storm in Austin when we flew in.
Yeah, I remember you talking about
so it was a lot.
That was your flight into Texas.
Flights got grounded in Austin, so we were diverted to San Antonio, and then we had to wait in the plane for like an extra 3 hours before they could fly us back to Austin. It was a nightmare.
Jesus.
So I got in super late, but anyways, went to Austin. That was a lot of fun. I saw Hadestown also in the time.
Did you really? I missed that. Yeah, oh my god, that's awesome.
It was so good.
It's supposed to be an incredible play.
It was astounding. Probably the best live show I've ever seen.
Really?
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Wow, okay.
I would try to go see it if you can.
The wife has been wanting to see, because she picked up on it like, I think while it was still like an off-Broadway thing before it had made it
before
like
it was even a Broadway thing, it was a concept album.
Yes, that was it. Yeah, she fell into it when it was just the concept album. Yep. She fell in love with that. And then it was like a year or two later, she was just like, it's on Broadway now. And I was like, oh, fuck, okay.
Yeah.
This must be good.
No, it's fantastic. The stage, incredible. The acting, the singing, incredible. I think that they sounded better than the Broadway recording, to be honest.
Really? Yeah. I feel like I often find that like when I have like the original Broadway cast recording and then I go see like another version of it, like the Pantages or something like that, I often find there's people in it that like I prefer to what the original was. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, like, oh, this person is better than the person on the recording. Like individual characters.
I just have a hard time saying better because I'm just kind of like, it's just such a different performance and take at a certain point.
I understand what you're saying.
You know what I mean? I'm just like obviously I have preferences on one. Now when you say that, you're meaning like this is what I prefer. But just
right. I do not share that feeling. I have no qualms saying that our Orpheus was better than the Broadway recording.
Fair enough.
No, but it was fantastic. I also had okay, so Friday I flew back from Austin, right? And then this Saturday, so 2 days ago, I had a little one-night cabaret performance that I was a part of.
Yeah, sorry, really I didn't get to go.
Oh, no. Not even a big deal. Like I said, it was a one-night cabaret
But
thing.
Still, it sounded fun, and I love that kind of stuff. I love that kind of shit.
Well, I mean, I will always invite you, of course. But it's not the end of the world. But
being an
really
adult
fun.
is realizing sometimes people can't come. Like that's
absolutely, especially to all of your little theater things.
Oh god, yeah.
Not everybody can make it all the time. But yeah, so we did that. It was like a benefit for the theater and stuff, so,
which is really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. I sang, so it was a miscast.
Yes.
So we had the chance to sing kind of whatever we wanted, as long as it was a role that we would never be cast as for like whatever reason, like too tall, too short, too male, you know?
Yeah.
So I sang See I'm Smiling from the last 5 years.
Oh, God, that song is
And
great.
I let those whores have it.
There you go.
We did the order, and I was like somewhere in the middle, and then like a couple days before they were like, oh, we're gonna do an intermission, we're gonna do like a 10-minute break, and I closed out Act 1.
Nice. There you go.
Yeah, it was pretty great.
I remember at one point, ages and ages and ages ago, when there were a little like theater troupe that we had up at Crafton, there was it never went anywhere, but there was a small discussion of doing something like that because somebody introduced the Miscast Cabaret idea, and it was it was decided by our friend Gina that it would be great to watch me do Ladies Who Lunch from Company.
Oh my God, I've never wanted anything more.
And I was just like, yeah, that would actually be really fun. That would be a good one. And Company's just one of my favorite musicals, so I'll always be down for it.
Yeah.
Also, that's still on my bucket list somewhere to do.
Your nails match your drink.
They do. Oh my God! I got new polishing from Holo Taco or Holo Taco.
Holo Taco.
Holo Taco. Yeah. I got like 3 new colors. Nice. One of them turns out Melly already had, but yeah, this is one of my new favorites.
Nice. Anyways, that's been me. I've just been busy and doing my thing.
Gotcha.
You know? How about you?
Oh boy, it's been a time for me. I somehow made it throughout this entire realm of this pandemic that we're still kind of sort of in. I don't fucking even know. Without ever catching COVID once. Despite the fact that I work in the healthcare system.
Right.
And I finally got COVID. Finally got me.
Yeah.
And man, that shit sucked.
Sorry to hear.
Gotta tell you, it was not.
Yeah.
It wasn't the worst. I've heard stories from people who had it way fucking worse. It was just the most like schizophrenic like illness I've ever had. Just like it literally within like 10-minute stretches of time, it would like switch between just being like an awful flu and then just a really bad cold. It was the most like back and forth I've ever had with like any kind of illness and whatnot.
Katy Perry, Hot and Cold.
Pretty much. Wow. Wow.
You heard it here first. COVID's like Katy Perry.
I'm giving up the title for old man references on the podcast. That goes to you now. That's at least like 20 years old at this point.
Oh no, surely not.
Katy Perry's Hot and Cold?
You think that came out in 2002?
I think it came out a long ass time. We're in 2020 right now, my friend. We're gonna look.
2022.
Yep. See. Let's look it up. Katy Perry.
I love that we're derailing the podcast to do
We
this.
are. We absolutely are. Let's see. That didn't tell me. 2008. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So, it was still a long ass time ago when it came out, all right?
Okay.
I had just graduated high school. That's how long ago that shit was. There we go.
Okay. I'm old. I get it.
I'm older than you, so.
You're right.
But other than that, it was just, I did get to finish, it did give me a lot of time at home, so I did get to finish off the Arkham series for the most part. Yep. Which is, that reminds me, I need my fucking soapbox real quick for this.
Oh, here we go.
Just because.
No episode is complete without.
No episode's complete without. But this is I'm not sure, but this might be one of the first times that my soapbox is directly video game related, though.
Oh.
Because I want to talk about something real quick. Just, I don't know whose favorite part of a video game is collecting all of the random ass fucking collectibles, but you need to stop.
We're looking at you, Assassin's Creed.
Looking at you, Assassin's Creed, the Arkham games, Far Cry, like all of them, all these huge open world games, especially, do not make it fucking storyline relevant that I have to get all your bullshit to fully complete the fucking game.
You have to get them?
Because one of the things that you have to do in Arkham City to get the full ending is to defeat all of the other villains in Arkham. And you can't do the Riddler until you do all of the puzzles and trophies and shits. Which is bullshit.
You gotta want it.
I want it. I just don't want to go through all of that stuff. I literally was just Googling. I was like, fuck it. I'm a 33-year-old man at this point.
That's fine.
Can I just pay my way out of this? Is there a way to just buy and say I completed all the trophies and whatnot and I'm done? Because I just want to see what the full ending is like in the game.
Right.
I know I can look it up on YouTube, but I want it for myself.
See, okay, so counterpoint.
Sure.
Counterpoint. If you don't put something of like significant story value behind getting all of those collectibles, then what's the point or the payoff for the people that are going through all the trouble of getting all of this.
Which I fully agree with, and there's a balance there because the first Arkham game, the first just Batman Arkham Asylum has that, but it's much more not easily, but it feels much more attainable, just like from the outside looking in, and it's much clearer for like there's trophies hidden around, there's like minor like riddles that you have to solve, and then there's like character bio stuff that you got to pick up and look for and whatnot. But it's much more attainable as like a gamer who has like a job and shit to do. You know what I mean? And other stuff he wants, and other games he wants to play, other stuff he wants to do.
Fair.
In that one, it's much more attainable, and I've done it every time I've played it because it's still fun and a part of the game. So I get what you're saying, but it's just like there's a line there where it's just kind of like
that's fair.
It just, even if it's plot relevant, it's still. The annoyance of going through and finding everything is not worth it at a certain point to me.
No, that's totally fair.
Yeah.
I was just taking the counterpoint.
Oh, for sure. and I appreciate that always.
So you've been playing Arkham. Anything else you've been playing?
Had the thought for this episode because once you know what you're doing with some of the Resident Evil stuff, you can actually get through it pretty quickly once you know what to do. And I was just like, I could burn through a couple of Resident Evil games tonight before we do the episode today. Completely forgot everything. It's been 8 hours in the first Resident Evil game, and I was just like, I gotta get to sleep before I do the fucking podcast. So, nope, never mind. We just did one.
Hey,
that'll be good enough for right now.
That's fine.
That'll be good enough for today. Yeah. Other than that, though, yeah, not a lot.
So we picked up a new game that we've been playing.
Yes.
It's like brand new. Came out within the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
I think. It's called Cult of the Lamb.
I've been hearing so much about this, and I have no idea what it is.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so it's like the roguelite, like all the good roguelite components of like Dead Cells, I would say. And also a cozy sim put together.
What?
Yeah.
What?
So
What?
Okay, so there you are. You wake up, you're a little lamb, and you're all shackled up. And you have to walk your way over to this creepy area, and you're gonna get sacrificed on an whole thing. Very satanic, this game.
I'm in, 100% I'm in.
So swing goes the axe, and you wake up, and you walk a little ways, and then you're face to face with this god who's been shackled somewhere.
Okay.
And he's like, yes, I'm bringing you back. You have to just create a cult for me and work to release me again.
Okay.
And so then you wake back up, you are resurrected, essentially.
Yeah.
And you kill all of the guys that were, sacrificing you, and then you run through the woods, and then you find a little area, and you set up camp, and you start, indoctrinating followers, and...
Incredible.
And it's Cult of the Lamb.
Oh my god, that's so good.
So great. It's 1, very cute, and 2, very satanic, which is the two
the
most
perfect
opposite,
mesh ever.
Yeah.
Perfect mesh ever.
Yeah. So when you're at base, you have to take care of your followers. You have to make sure that they have beds and food and that they're cleaning, and things like that, right? And then also you're going on these what are called crusades. So you go into the woods, and there are these 4 they're called the 4 heretics, and they're the gods that imprisoned the big god that brought you back. So you have to go into their realms and fight your way through different areas to get to them so that you can kill them and move on to the next.
Okay.
Yeah. And because they each guard a chain that shackles the big god.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, you defeat all of them, you release the big guy.
Yeah.
And it's really cool, and there's a lot of cool other areas that you can go to and characters that you run into a lot. So it's a really cool blend of roguelike, because Dead Cells, when you go out on your crusade, you don't have anything, so you pick up a weapon and you pick up a curse, a spell.
Gotcha.
And then you fight your way through all of these different areas, and it's not a very expansive maze type thing, but you have options, different ways that you can go to get through.
Gotcha.
And it's really, really great.
Okay.
It's pretty buggy in some ways.
Right.
But there was a patch that came out within the last 4 days, I want to say, that's fixed a lot of the big problems, and most of the problems are visual now.
Yeah.
I
feel like that'll always happen because, especially with something like this, because I remember I heard absolutely nothing about this game until it hit and streamers picked up on it.
Yeah.
And then it fucking blew up. Like,
Yeah.
the same thing happened with... Oh, God, what was the... not Among Us. Oh, Fall Guys. Like, that got released, and everyone picked up on it. And it was a smaller company that made it, so they were just kind of like... Sorry about the bugs. We weren't ready for this massive amount of people to just like jump into this thing.
Yeah, and
we're
they totally could be. I think there may have been like a very small, like a much smaller amount of testing that was done on consoles, because I think I understand that the PC version is a little better.
Works a little bit better.
But they patched it already, so like
it got fixed right away. So who cares?
Things got patched, so like and it's really fun and so fucking funny at times.
Brilliant.
So you've got to do like rituals to like keep the people happy, you know, and whatever, and you got to feed them, and so you can do a sermon every day, and you can do rituals, and some of your rituals are like we dance around the bonfire, and then like their faith is increased, whatever.
Okay.
But some of them are like, we're gonna kill somebody, like we're gonna sacrifice somebody, so you have to literally kill one of your followers.
Oh my god!
And you can get to a point where like if you're out in the crusade and you die, you can instead choose to kill one of your followers so that you can be resurrected and come back.
Fucking hell.
It's great. You can marry a follower. Yeah.
That's fun.
It's great.
That's fun.
And they get old and die.
Okay.
And you have to you have to take care of their bodies. So you have to bury them, or you can butcher them for their meat and their bones.
Oh my god.
So fucking fun. And you're just a cute little lamb.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it so much. Okay, gonna have to pick it up and try it out.
Absolutely.
Sorry, just remembered that I did play something else, because when I did my last stream, I tried out a new game. I tried As Dusk Falls.
Tell me more.
It got released pretty much immediately to Game Pass. I don't know the company, unfortunately, that made it. I remember I caught wind of it when I was checking out all of the new releases, when like Bethesda and Capcom are doing like their whatever the fuck they call it now, where it's just like, instead of like doing the big E3 thing now because of COVID and shit, they did it was a big showcase of like, here's all the stuff they got coming out. So, and I don't know if this is a Bethesda game, but I know it was in the same thing for like a bunch of Bethesda stuff, so I think it might be like a smaller company that's like adjacent to. Anyway, point being, very reminiscent of like a Telltale sort of like, there's an overall story that you're following. You're not like third person or first person controlling everything the character does and whatnot. It's a lot of just kind of like, what are you going to say? What are you going to do here? How are you going to act? Like that kind of stuff. And you're just it jumps between characters, but the main story is you're just like this middle-aged white dude who's taking his family, his wife, his daughter, and the grandpa with them as well. They're moving like halfway across the country, like from California to like Montana or something like that. And the car breaks down, and they stop at this, and they go to this little hotel, and just like to see like, hey, we need a place to stay for the night. Is there a mechanic that you guys can get out here for us and whatnot? And while they're getting set up and doing that, three guys with bandanas on and guns come in and tell everyone to get down and just like take over the hotel, basically, because they just robbed the sheriff in town.
Oh no!
Yeah, and the sheriff is like corrupt, and there's just like a lot of levels to it. And I started playing because I was like, we're gonna try this out for the stream. If it doesn't work out, I've got other stuff, because I'm still trying to figure out what the fuck's going on with Mass Effect and it not working properly for the stream. Yeah. And I tested this game and it worked. So I was just like, okay, we'll go with this for today.
So weird.
And I started off with like the animation style. I'm still not a big fan of, because it's not like, it's more like it's not so much like a fluid animation. It's like you're catching like, the camera's kind of going between like little snapshots of moments rather than following like a full animation track. Oh. You just have to see it for you to understand what I mean. It's weird to describe, but it's like you're getting frames of moments that tell a bigger story, essentially. Which is, at first I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to hang with this. I don't know if I like this.
Comic panels almost?
Not quite. Like I said, it's really complicated to explain, because some stuff moves in action in the moment, but then the characters will kind of just like be like little snapshots of them, like as the moment goes on.
So is it like those like moments in Repo the Genetic Opera?
No, again, it's a little bit more comic booky. It's hard to describe. I'll just have to show you a clip at some point, and you'll understand what I mean. But like, yeah, and I was just like, I don't know if I'm about this aesthetic, because like that's something that'll immediately pull me out of something. Is like, if I can't vibe with the look of something, I just won't do it.
Right.
but then fell into the story and fell into the character choices and the way that mechanic works. And I was just like, it is some of the most emotionally intricate stuff I've seen in a game style like this. Like, there were actual, like, beyond just, like, the options where it's just, like, it's you sitting there between a couple of choices, and you're just kind of like, well, I wouldn't want to do either one of these things. Like, why isn't this doesn't feel right? It really makes you feel caught in the moment of just being like, well, what the fuck do I do here? What's the best way to go up? Shit. And just, like...
Yeah.
And it also allows you to, like, follow the rabbit hole down in a certain sense in certain moments. Like, there's a... And I love games like this because you get to break down really intimate moments. Like, there's a conversation you have with your wife where you think she might be cheating on you. And you have very, very good reason to suspect it. And the game gives you the option to be like, you know what? We're moving soon. Let's not do this right now. Obviously, she's moving with me. It'll be fine. Like, da-da-da-da-da. Or you could keep pushing. And it's just like, the way you keep pushing, it doesn't immediately make your character a dick for wanting to press more. And you could have a conclusion that is like, you guys kiss and make up and everything's good, but then there's also the option to be like, look, I'm gonna forgive you, but I can't right now. Like, I can't right now. And I appreciate writing that does that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more... It's one of the few times with a game like this where it's just like the characters have really, really felt real to me in that sense. And I really, really appreciate the effort that went into, like, making more complex choices in a game emotionally and having that conveyed through, like, a simple system, like just pick a dialogue option, essentially. So I'm really into it, and it's broken up into chapters and episodes. I did 1 through 3 on the last stream, and I think I just saw an update for it, so I think the next chapters are out now. So next stream that I do solo, I'm gonna hopefully be continuing on the adventure and seeing what the hell happens next.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now that all of our pleasantries are out of the way, let's get into today. What are we talking about today, Brenden?
We're talking about Resident Evil.
We are. We're not going into specifics for one single game, and we're not even going to be getting... it's not a deep dive into Resident Evil. I more want to sort of, like, lightly walk you through the timeline of Resident Evil today. But just, like, in terms of the time... I want to clarify something really quickly here. So, first of all, I said this before we recorded, but I want to make sure it's on camera. I owe you an apology for all the shit I gave you from way, way, way back when we did the Zelda timeline episodes that we did, because I said some of this is unnecessary and convoluted and needlessly complicated and blah, 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 blah. This is some of the most unnecessary bullshit I've ever looked into in terms of video games. It's fucking insanity. And this is... I'm talking shit. Resident Evil is still one of my favorite game series. It's still one of my favorite franchises in terms of video games. I love these games so much. But goddamn, does it get lost in the fucking weeds for a while, man. Holy crap. Going back into this reminded me of why, like, Resident Evil 7 or Biohazard was sort of a reset for the series while continuing the story along. Because they just clearly was kind of like, this isn't even a horror game anymore. So we need a reset in terms of, like, tone and feel for the game. So that's why that is the way that it is. So, yeah, I just kind of want to walk you through a little bit of the timeline here. But I don't want to give too much away to you on this. Because I still think taking you through... We've talked about it before. Yeah. We had a small discussion before the podcast about how, like, these episodes for the podcast are really fun. Where it's just sort of like one person sort of like is sort of like taking the reins on the other person's just sort of along for the ride and asking questions as we go along and whatnot. I think this would be a good one to also do for the stream at some point. Yeah, sure. I think me walking you through Resident Evil a little bit would be a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, because I'm not going to be able to cover fucking everything in this episode. No. I'm not going to go through the whole time. Jesus fucking Christ. I'm sorry. It's hitting me now just like how much I'm trying to accomplish in a day.
I mean, I did the whole Zelda timeline.
You did. Here's the thing I'll say about that, though, and this is not a demeaning comment about that at all. Those games were designed for children. So there's an accessibility level that is assumed there no matter what, whereas these are not. And I don't care what anybody says. Like, I get that technically shit in the Resident Evil timeline dates back to the fucking 60s. That is true. Okay. Not going to be going into that too much today. But it does, and I understand that. However, they were figuring shit out as they fucking went along, and you cannot convince me otherwise. Shit gets too muddled in the middle of all of this for it not to be... There's no way that this was the plan out the gates. There's no way, because if it was, someone is a lunatic at Capcom who was in charge of the overall story of this thing. Oh my god. So, let's just jump in and start at what is technically not the beginning of this series, but was the first initial release. And also want to clarify real quickly here, everything I'm talking about, it is going to be starting with the remakes that have been done so far. So, I will be starting with the first Resident Evil, but the remastered version of it, and then the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes subsequently. Everything else is by release as far as it goes. And I'm also only covering the numbered games, like the main title games. For this one, I'm not doing Survivor, Code Veronica, or any of the other offshoot stuff, because with the exception of stuff like Code Veronica, most of that is sort of a contained story on its own and doesn't fully get involved in the overall plot that is Resident Evil. So I'm not going to be talking about some of the side stuff, just the main titles that are canon officially in the plot and are still important to the overall story of Resident Evil. So, starting off, as I mentioned in the intro, and the first Resident Evil game, you play as either Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine, who are a part of the Alpha Team for STARS, which stands for Special Tactics and Rescue Services. And I know, it doesn't actually make sense for an acronym. You don't include "and" in your acronym, but they wanted STARS to work, so they made it. Normally you don't, though. Normally you don't.
No, not normally. It's kind of one of those things, like... we can or we can't.
I know it's not like an official rule, but
better,
typically that's you don't include that in the overall thing. But they wanted STARS to work, so they did.
Yeah.
And you are sent into the Arclay Mountains, which is the deep forest, which is part of the Raccoon City forest, deep in the woods there. And you're sent there because your Bravo team was sent there out initially to investigate possible acts of cannibalism happening. Hikers and families up there have been found with just their guts ripped out and their bodies ripped apart and whatnot. And when you go out there, you discovered that their helicopter has crash landed. There's bodies everywhere. And then you're immediately attacked by zombie dogs.
Okay.
And the only thing you could do is run away. And the first place you go to is just this big, creepy-ass old mansion in the middle of the woods. And no matter who you play, one of your team members goes missing. If you play as Jill, Chris goes missing. And your initial quest is set off to go and try to find him. If you play as Chris, another team member named Barry goes missing, and you're sent off to try to go find him. Also, for clarification, there's different timelines that kind of happen in Resident Evil, but it's not as split as Zelda is, where it's there's the young Link and old Link, blah 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 timelines or whatever the hell it was. It's this is the main canon timeline that we're following, and then there's another one that happens in the game that sort of stops there at a certain point.
Got it.
So what is commonly known canonically as the main timeline is the one that follows the character of Jill Valentine.
Okay.
And so you go off as her. You can't find Chris, but you immediately discover that there are zombies in this place. And then it's just a quest to try to uncover what the hell happened here. How were there zombies? What does this place have to do with everything else that's happening around you? And it's just, I don't know if it was the first, because I'm sure other games came before it, but it is often referred to as sort of the grandfather of the survival horror genre, because it is the most survival horror game that I think to this day that you could still play. I am talking about the original Resident Evil, because everything is so boxed in and contained at a certain point. That it's just your mechanics are incredibly limited. Your viewpoint is literally camera angles that you would see in movies. As you walk down hallways, that's the angle you're watching your character walk into, and then as you go by, it switches to watch them run past.
Oh.
So it very much limits it is entirely designed to be how do we make this as claustrophobic and scary as we possibly can for players?
Interesting. I didn't know that Resident Evil did that first.
I really don't know if it was first, but it was definitely one of the first ones that did it and did it in a way that was accessible and popular to people.
Because when I think of that, as particularly with the changing camera angles, the camera that you can't control, I think of Silent Hill.
Yes, Silent Hill also definitely did that and does it incredibly well. I don't have enough knowledge to go into Silent Hill.
And that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Okay, so give me a snapshot of what are the mechanics? What is taking you through this game? Because I don't know a thing about it. Do you have a gun? Can you just run and hide? What's the zhuzh?
You do have a gun, but it's not trying to think of another example. It's sort of a mix between something like Outlast and a Left 4 Dead, where it's like you can shoot things, you can kill things, but that's not always necessarily the best option, because one of the mechanics within it is very, very limited ammo capacity and very, very limited resources, and that includes your health items. So the idea is to try to... There's achievements for it of just like making it through the game without killing anything, or just using your knife, or without using any ammo. So the main focus of the game is to only use your weapon when you absolutely need to, because otherwise you're going to screw yourself over later on. And it uses something called, commonly referred to as tank mechanics, where it's like the way, when it's much more, the remake does a better job of making it a bit easier to sort of navigate through it. But it is, the original version of it is literally just kind of like, your character is sort of like, has very limited movement in terms of like, you can go forward, and then you can turn, and then you could go forward again. And then you could turn, and then you could go forward again. Yeah. It doesn't quite translate now. Like, now it's a little more like, it's a little bit more free in terms of like how you can navigate, but it still very much limits like how much movement your character has in any given moment. And everything is very tight. Like, you're walking through hallways, like you're in a forest that is like very condensed. So it is all there to make this feel of just like this like claustrophobic, very fearful environment of like, yeah, you're not dealing with like hundreds of zombies at a time like you might in like a Left 4 Dead game or World War Z or Back 4 Blood or something like that. But to me, there's something much more scary about going into a room and being like, okay, there's 3 zombies in here. I have 6 bullets.
Right.
How do I get through here without dying?
Right.
With these limited controls and camera angles, and with that, I'm just like doing my best to try to navigate through and whatnot. It makes you think a lot more than like a normal shooter would. Even compared to the remakes now that go full third-person shooter. Like, it's... I still go back to the original because I love that mechanic of, like, forcing me to go into a room and be like, okay, how do I duck around these guys without getting hurt? Because you can't even, like, bob and weave. Like, there's no, like, mechanic like the... There's not even a duck mechanic.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's literally just like, how do I get around shit? How do I move? How do I do that? Like, it's...
Yeah. So how does that work with, like, aiming your gun? Because that's kind of hard for me to imagine as a person who hasn't played a game like this.
Yeah, the best I can describe it is sort of like point and pray. It's a little like, that there is an auto game... There's an auto aim mechanic to it that you sort of rely on.
Okay.
But there's really not a lot of, like, specificity for, like, where you're aiming. So it's like, obviously, zombie... And as it is in the game as well, first thing is just like, well, shoot them in the fucking head. Blow their head off. They're dead. They're gone. But especially with the handgun, you don't really have a lot of control over that. With the shotgun, you can kind of cheat a little bit where they get closer. You can aim up and you might blow their heads off. But even then, it's kind of a crapshoot and depends on how the game decides it wants to recognize the hits. So it makes that a little bit more complicated. Which, in the remake, they introduced a really, really, really fun thing. And I say fun in the most sadistic way that I could possibly be fun. Because it does a thing where if you don't blow a zombie's head off, you can still kill it. And it will technically still die. However, if you just leave it as is, with its body intact, and you go running around doing other shit, if you come back later, that thing might get back up, and it'll now sprout huge claws out of its arms. And now it can run and come after you. Because it's transformed to something now called a Crimson Head.
Yikes.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's just like, you may think it's dead, it could still be a problem for you later on, which is something that I find fucking horrifying in the game.
That is horrifying.
So I had a deep paranoia. So it also introduces the mechanic where you can take a lighter and a thing of like lighter fluid, and you could burn the bodies, and that will permanently get rid of it.
Sure.
So there's a lot of paranoid running around looking for kerosene canisters, trying to be like, where the fuck do I go? Right. Oh god, I just shot this thing and now it's going to get back up later. I got to make sure I can take care of it now because I need to come back to this room. It also does a really fun, cool, old school thing too of just kind of like memorizing your map and where things are. Also helps out a lot too, because you could look at something like that and go, okay, I didn't kill this thing all the way. However, I don't need to come back here again, so I'm not going to waste the fuel on this thing. So I'm just going to keep going. But they can also come in through doors sometimes. So even if you leave and you're like, I'm fine, if it's adjacent to another hallway you got to go through, that thing might come back out and still fuck your day up. Which is really, really fucking mean for it to do.
So, game 1 sounds really, really scary.
It is.
Very scary.
Still terrifying.
What's the resolution then at the end of the first game? Like, what is found out?
So, the main thing that goes into it, and this is another one that as we discussed in our last Definitely Casuals episode, that if I realize now if I get the mind wipe on Resident Evil and play through it again for the first time, I would love to do that.
Yeah.
Because one of the cool things about it is that when you jump into it, at first you think it's similar to something like Outlast, where you think like, oh, ghosts, something supernatural, something spooky. 'Cause you're dealing with like zombies and dogs that are like half eaten and destroyed, and there's giant snakes and giant spiders. So it's all like sort of old school haunted house shit to a certain point, right? Very House on Haunted Hill, I would say, is sort of like what I would akin it to. But as you go along and you discover more to it, there's a more sci-fi approach that's happening there, and that there's also a secret lab that's underneath the mansion that you're running around through. And so the resolution that you find is that both of your teams were actually part of an overall plot to collect data on what was happening there, because like the breakout of the zombies through this virus called the T virus that this company Umbrella is developing. The breakout was accidental, but like all evil giant corporations, they went, well, let's capitalize on this a bit. We have a secret agent that is involved in the local police department, specifically with the Team Stars. And he can send people in and he can oversee collecting the data and seeing what's going on. And we'll even send him in as part of the next team that goes in to collect the data as needed, take back anything that they need for further research, and then blow up the facility and act like nothing ever fucking happened up here. And the entire team of stars will be dead by the time he's done, and we'll be good to go. You find out at the end of the game that person who has been on your team the whole time is a guy named Albert Wesker. He's a through-line villain throughout pretty much the entire series. Betrays you at the end, is collecting the data and whatnot, but you also find out that he's planning on taking some of the Umbrella secrets and selling them to somebody else. So this is where I didn't say it now because I deleted it from the beginning because I couldn't say it, but this is where the corporate espionage angle comes out. Of course I say it now! Because I nail it now, motherfucker! Yeah. Of course. But in the final resolution, he releases this creature called the Tyrants, which is what the T virus stands for. It's the tyrant variation of this one virus that they've been working on. It comes out, you think it kills him. Like I said, he comes back later, so obviously it doesn't. And then you just have a big shootout fight on the roof with this thing, and then you blow it up and you leave as the entire facility goes kaboom. Kaboom. And now yourself, if you do going off of the canon story as it is, yourself, Joe Valentine, Chris Redfield, and then Barry Burton are the only surviving members of the team, besides from Brad Vickers, who's flying the helicopter. And essentially, you guys all decide, like, okay, we're going to be going into this corporation called Umbrella. We're going to try to expose them and everything they've been doing up here, because the next games discuss how there was just like a deep plot to like bury what happened up there, pretend like nothing ever happened. Umbrella had no involvement. So that's where it's sort of like the kickoff point is for like everything else that happens there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Fun.
Does it make sense so far to you?
Yeah. So far, I'm like with it. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Because
oh no.
Well, it's not super complicated yet. It gets a little complicated. This is just where the timeline thing kind of jumps in, because now we kind of have to discuss Resident Evil 2 and 3 simultaneously.
Okay.
Because they are happening around the same time. And there's timeline videos online that break this down way better than I'm going to. I'm going to kind of go over one game and then the other game. I know that shit lines up differently in the actual timeline of things, but just for the sake of making it easier, this is how I'm going to do it. Yeah. So now we go to Resident Evil 2. And again, I'm covering the remake here, the one that just came out recently, which is a great game, and I highly recommend people to check it out. So in Resident Evil 2, similarly to 1, you follow one of two characters, either Leon Kennedy or Claire Redfield. If you follow Leon Kennedy's story, he is there, and this is one where it's like everything kind of is canon to a certain point. The way you play it kind of makes it a little muddled, but in terms of like the events that happen in the game, everything that happens to each character is considered canon for like the rest of the story and whatnot. But if you're Leon, you have just been hired by the local police department, RPD, and you're literally going in to start your first day at the local precinct. If you're Claire, you kind of found out about all the fucked up shit that happened previously in the mountains in the manor with your brother Chris, and now you're trying to look for Chris to make sure that he's okay. because that happened, and he kind of disappeared to go look into more shit for some of the shady stuff that happens with Umbrella. So he's just gone, and now you're going to the last place that Claire knew that he was to look for him. You arrive in Raccoon City, sort of at the worst point of a zombie viral outbreak happening. Yeah, and it's a little icky to kind of play it now, like in the middle of COVID shit now, because it starts off as like there's just a massive wave of influenza that's hitting Raccoon City, and people are getting more and more sick. No one knows what's happening. The media's trying to act like everything's cool and fine. And it turns out that there's people like in the mayor's office and the police department who are in bed with this corporation Umbrella, and they're helping them try to cover shit up and whatnot. And then just like literally within a day, it's just like the people who were sick start attacking people, and it's just a massive outbreak from then on. And it's as Leon, you arrive in the city with Claire because you guys meet up, and then immediately get separated after a car crash. And then it's as Leon, you're trying to track your way through the police department and make your way out of it into the city to sort of like figure out what the hell happened, who can I help, who can I save. Like it's a very fairly straightforward in that way of just it is a survival horror game where it's just like you are one trying to get out and two just trying to figure out what the fuck happened here.
Right.
And similar thing, there are underground lab facilities, secret experiments going on. You fight a creature that is just like a very humanoid, but it's got like a giant eyeball in its shoulder. Yeah. And every time you fight it, it gets more and more and more mutated and more grotesque. But the main thing, the selling point to me, especially for the remake for Resident Evil 2, is a very interesting mechanic that I can't believe I haven't seen until now. At least in like a mainstream survival horror game, is that the other thing you have to deal with is this creature named Mr. X, which is, on a surface level, he just looks like a dude who is like 6'8", pale gray skin. He wears like a fedora top hat, and he's got like a big black trench coat and big gloves on. And
Slender Man.
Well, Slender Man if he took steroids.
Oh.
Like, say they made another Slender Man movie and they were like, you know who'd make a great Slender Man? The Rock. Like, that's more the vibe of what this guy has. It's like a very jacked Slender Man.
Jacked Man.
Jacked Man. That's a whole other thing. It's a whole other thing, my friend.
Swole Man.
Yeah, that's a little better, but still gross.
Ripped Man.
Okay, sure.
Yoked Man.
He has a name, and his name is Mr. X. I don't know why we're trying to give him a new title. He has a name. But the thing about this character that's interesting as far as like an enemy in the game is that, one, you can't kill him. Like, you just can't kill him. You can stun him for a little bit. But that's the best you can do until the very, very end of the game, obviously. But once he appears in the game, he is constantly after you. And he could pop in anywhere at pretty much any fucking time. Like I said, like there's safe rooms you could jump into where you just like as the mechanic you can't go in there. But like there's no set game path or like cinematics that he. There's some, but like there's no like set cinematics that he has to be activated for him to come after you. Like you could just be walking around and then just like in an area that you were just in where you didn't see him, all of a sudden this dude will just like open a door and crouch in and just start walking at you like very Michael Myers style.
Yeah.
Just like that like fast walk, but like he is just there to fuck you up.
Yeah.
And it is that. Like how I'm describing it and how you feel, playing it is a whole other fucking level of dealing with that shit. And it's it's so rough, but I love it. I love it at the end of the day. And of course you have all the similar shit where it's like you introduce that there may or may not be another corporation that is looking for Umbrella secrets through this character named Ada Wong, who gets introduced, who's a big fan fucking favorite. I love Ada as well. She's a great character. Very complex and interesting. Because she first gets introduced as an FBI agent in the game, there to try to like uncover the secrets of Umbrella as well, and find out later on she's a mercenary that got hired by this other company who wants to steal Umbrella secrets because they also want to make bioweapons to try to sell to the government and use them, blah 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 blah. So this is where
don't trust anybody.
Don't trust pretty much in Resident Evil. Trust almost
No one.
Nobody. Unless they have a very tragic backstory. Then you can trust them.
Okay.
If they're me, it's kind of like, Umbrella killed my sister, or my dad was a scientist and he died, like, or blah, 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 blah. Then you can trust them. But other than that, yeah, trust absolutely nobody in Resident Evil. But this is also where the gears switch mechanically. Well, overall timeline-wise, it already happened, but, like, this is also a switch from 1, the remake to 1 to the remake of 2, because 2, they go with just, like, over-the-shoulder, third-person shooter mechanic. But for 2 and 3 in particular, what is impressive to me about it is their ability to still make it very terrifying and keep that, like, that claustrophobic feeling of, like, you're still in very tight hallways. Right. It's still very much like, okay, I'm in a room, there's 4 zombies. How do I get what I need and possibly get out without having to fire a bullet or use any of my health stuff or without interacting with these fuckers at all? Also keeping in mind that there may or may not be just a 6'8" Dwayne The Rock Johnson looking asshole just constantly fucking gunning for your ass.
Right.
And it's one of the remake especially is one of my favorites in the series now. I've played it a dozen fucking times at this point.
Nice.
Yeah.
So then what is the sort of resolution or what comes out in number 2?
Yeah, so just as a heads up, if you're unfamiliar with Resident Evil, which you are, so this is for you and some audience members, the resolution for a lot of the games, particularly the main title games, is going to be building blows up, shoot the bad guy with a rocket.
Huh. Cool.
So as you go through the game, you find out that what happened was that another scientist working for Umbrella, and this is for both of the campaigns, whether you're Leon or Claire, so this works all around. Was that another scientist working for Umbrella named William Birkin was planning on taking what is now referred to as the G virus, which is a sort of there's so much shit that happens with the viruses in this game series, but too long didn't read. The G virus is just an updated version of the T virus. That where the T virus reanimated dead flesh, but just sort of as it was. The G virus, if it infects the right person, can actually help restore and regrow the dead cells that are damaged or hurt as you go along. It doesn't let you die, and then it, like I said, with like the giant eyeball on the shoulder and whatnot, every time you fight anything that is infected by the G virus in this fashion, it constantly changes and regrows and becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Ew.
And so this guy, William Birkin, was going to take the virus and try to sell it off to somebody else and leave Umbrella. Umbrella found out about it, sent their own security team in to kill him. Before he dies, he infects himself with the G virus, turns into this weird thing with the giant eyeball on his shoulder, and also accidentally lets a bunch of the G virus leak into the city's water supply.
Oh no!
Which infects the city.
Yeah.
To which, again, Umbrella being the corporate assholes that they are, they went, well, let's get some data out of this at least.
So is that in addition to the outbreak that happened, or is that the outbreak that we saw at the beginning of the game?
That is the outbreak that we saw at the beginning of the game.
Okay,
sorry. Yes,
so it's an outbreak of the G virus.
Yes,
okay.
It's an outbreak of the G virus, which is a subset of the T virus. And like I said, it all gets kind of muddled there.
Sure.
But it's weird because on most people it infects, it still does the same thing as the T virus and just turns you into a zombie after you die. Uh-huh. But on certain it gets into like certain types of genomes and DNA and stuff like that. And it gets muddled and complicated and
da. It's like every 1 in 100 people become a super zombie, right?
Well, interesting point of fact there is like part of what William Birkin, the scientist, was originally brought into Umbrella for was that they found out that 10% of the population was just automatically immune to the original T virus, and he was originally brought in to make sure that didn't happen. It kind of goes into a whole like conspiracy theory thought of like, how do you sell a cure with no disease? And so it's like Umbrella. Sorry, I'm all over the place. I'm sorry, but Umbrella's big cover is that they're a pharmaceutical company. But their main goal is to create bioweapons to sell to different governments and militaries and blah 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 blah. Right. But part of their thing with that too is that it's like they discover this thing that they can make called the T virus that reanimates dead bodies and dead flesh and blah 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 blah. And so part of the way you sell your cure for that is to say, well, it infects everybody. So to get rid of that 10%, which would be billions and billions of people still on the planet, you want to be able to sell that to as many people as you possibly can. So if you create a virus that infects everybody, no matter what, you can sell your cure a lot easier.
Yeah.
Arguably. That's sort of like a very, very subset part of the plot. Like, it doesn't even come in a major way. But part of it, too, is that Mr. X, the big guy I was talking about, he is sent in by Umbrella to be like, well, let's test some of our bigger, more successful bioweapons, like Mr. X, send him in, drop him in the police department, see how much damage he could do. We'll take that data and collect it, and we'll use it for ourselves, basically. Because they're still thinking, like, we can cover this up. We've still got the media on our side. We've still got people in the government on our side. We can get through this and we can cover it up.
We've covered up one.
We've already covered up one giant, awful, disgusting fucking thing.
Up, like,
we could do it again. But in the middle of you running around finding all this stuff out, you realize that the government does know what's happening in Raccoon City. And their decision is to go, like, fuck it, scuttle the ship, and they're literally going to launch a nuke and just destroy the entire city. So your other thing now is like, we just need to get the fuck out of Raccoon City.
Wow.
And now it's you and Claire and William Birkin's daughter, Sherry Birkin, trying to make their escape out of this city now. Because part of the plot, too, is that William Birkin is looking for his daughter. Not in, like, a nice paternal way, like there's still some humanity left in him. It's because now that he has turned into this horrible creature, his main goal is to make the virus spread and mutate. And because they have similar genes to each other, she's the next best host to infect the G virus with to make another bioweapon happen, basically.
Christ.
Yeah, it's fucked up and really, really dark.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so, big climax of the game. The reveal happens with Ada Wong. You think that she dies because she gets shot by one of the remaining scientists who knows that she's a mercenary. She falls in. You get on like an underground train that is there from Umbrella. That is there for, like, if shit completely hits the fan, people from Umbrella can get the fuck out of Dodge, basically. Mm-hmm. Hop on there, you have one final fight with William Birkin, who is just now, literally, like, the final fight with William Birkin. He takes up, like, the entire, like, subway tunnel as he chases you out in the train. Yeah. And it's just, like, a big mess of, like, flesh and eyeballs, and it's just, it's this, oh yeah, the creatures and monsters in Resident Evil are some of the most disturbing and disgusting looking things I've ever fucking seen.
Anything with, like, multiple eyeballs in places where eyeballs shouldn't
be is so, like, it's so icky feeling. It's so weird and gross. Yeah, that's what he slowly turns into.
Yeah.
But also, like, that's his weak point, so it's, like, plenty of shots to, like, take.
At that point. Obviously, the eyeball is the weak spot.
Yeah, and then as Leon, you have your final confrontation with Mr. X, which is, in classic RE fashion, you're sitting there and you first think, like, okay, I'm just trying to survive, because you're on a huge elevator going down to the train, and you're just kind of like, okay, now I just have to survive and get around this motherfucker and just try to survive till I get down there. And then just like, and then as you're sitting there, you basically hear, hey, and then a rocket launcher falls next to your feet and you just kind of go, ah! And blow him the fuck up.
Nice.
And it turns out it was Ada, who is not dead now. She had faked her death, essentially, and did one last thing to try to help you before she also got the fuck out of Dodge. Because now she has what she needs, and so she's going to bounce. Then you get on the train with Claire and Sherry Birkin. You make your way out of the city right as the nuke hits, and then kaboom, and it blows the fuck up.
And once again, it's Barry. Everything that happens.
And once again, you vow to take down Umbrella.
Right.
Like, it happens pretty much at the end of almost every game.
Okay, so then do you want to get into the third one that happens simultaneously with 2?
Yeah, let's go ahead and go into 3 now.
All right.
So with 3, it is you only have the option for one character, because now you're playing as Jill Valentine, who was one of the ones from the original,
the first one, yeah.
From the first one. Yeah, she's now
canonically.
Yeah, this is
this
when we say that this is the canon timeline, because this is everything involved that happened with Jill from the first one is sort of into play in this one now. Okay. So, if you play as Chris in the first one, Barry is dead. Like, one of the characters, Barry is dead as a part of the plot. In this timeline, Barry's still alive.
Oh, okay.
So that's like one of the little splits that kind of happens here. You're in Raccoon City. You are planning on leaving because you got fired from the police department for very openly talking about, like, Umbrella's involvement in the Arclay Mountains and the manor and everything that was going on there and whatnot. And you find out in Resident Evil 2, you find out your police chief was on the take with the corporation. So he's corrupt and a piece of shit.
Right.
And so he decides to let you go. So you're just like, well, fuck it then. I'm getting the fuck out of Raccoon City because I'm not sticking around. Because you see the influenza shit starting to happen and you go, I know what the fuck this is. No one's going to listen to me. I'm getting the fuck out of here. Bye. And so you try to bounce at the beginning of the game. You're like a day away from leaving or something like that, and that's when the huge outbreak, like the actual like zombie infestation, happens in Raccoon City.
Okay.
One of the other surviving members, Brad, who was the helicopter pilot, calls you and says, you need to get the fuck out of town now. I'm doing my best to leave. We need to go. Shit has hit the fan. And as you're talking to him on the phone, the wall to your apartment just explodes, and another bioweapon creature called the Nemesis, which is, again, just like 7 feet fucking tall, broad shoulder, just a massive thing. His face is like stitched along the side here, like it was like flesh put back together. He has no skin around his nose and mouth, so it's just like an open, bare teeth looking thing.
Yeah.
And again, sort of like Mr. X, you cannot kill it, but similar to the creature that William Birkin turns into, every time you do defeat it, it grows back bigger and stronger and meaner. So it's this ever-evolving, ever-changing thing that is specifically there to... Mr. X was there just to sort of like cause destruction on whoever and kill whoever he could to collect combat data on what it can do. Nemesis is there specifically to kill the remaining members of STARS. So it's there to go after Jill Valentine and Brad Vickers and anybody else who was left over from that team.
Hence Nemesis.
Yeah. And for 3, especially in the remake, it is a much more straightforward, I say, third-person shooter, whereas Resident Evil 2 is still very much trying to follow like that sort of like, it's a shooter, but it's still a lot of puzzle mechanics. It's still a lot of like going back and forth, trying to figure a bunch of shit out. And there's a little bit of that in 3, but it kind of flows a little bit more like an arcade shooter, I'd say. It's a little bit more oriented on giving the player a bit more control over what's happening in the scenes. And it's a lot more focused on like, no, there are sections where it is just going to be you shooting zombie after zombie after zombie, and you were just killing zombies until you get out of this zone, basically. Which some people didn't like. I kind of like the balance there of being like, look, this one is more survival horror. This one is as well, but it's a little more focused on like the actual like enjoyment of gameplay. Because like I think my personal opinion is that the remakes for Resident Evil are sort of the testing grounds for what's going to work for the next like title that they make. Because like the best example I could say is that like for Mr. X, that mechanic of being able to follow you and go wherever you want, they use that in Resident Evil Village with Lady Dimitrescu,
right?
Who, while you're in her section, wherever you go, she could find you and follow you and shit like that. So I think that's like the remakes right now are kind of like testing grounds for what they could use later on down the line. But yeah, you're running around as Jill, basically, essentially just trying to survive, and you find yourself working with a guy named Carlos, who is a part of like essentially like a biohazard security team for Umbrella. But he's sort of a contracts like out of Umbrella sort of hired mercenary that got hired into the team. So he doesn't know like overall how bad he was a dude who took a job, basically. So he doesn't know how terrible Umbrella is. He thinks that there was like a weird outbreak. He doesn't know what's happening, but Umbrella sent him in as a part of a team to get as many survivors out of the city as possible. So Jill starts yelling at him, basically going like, you work for a fucked up corporation. They did all this shit. And he's like, what are you talking about? I don't know what any of this means. What the fuck is a T-virus? Like, and he's just lost and confused. And you do also bounce back and forth at certain points of the game between the two of them, which is really, really cool. Because Carlos is a great character as well. Really, really cool, interesting characters in a lot of the Resident Evil stuff. Some are generic, like, I know Chris is a fan favorite, but he's generic fucking white guy. There's a lot more interesting stuff happening with Jill and like guys like Carlos and Leon, in my opinion. But as a part of his team is another guy named Nikolay, who is sort of just like a shady Russian dude at the beginning, and you're like, well, this guy's just sort of like, you know, out for his own survival, trying to take care of himself, like, oh, I don't give a fuck who lives, who dies, as long as I make it out. Turns out, also espionage from, I think, if I'm trying to, no, he's also there on behalf of Umbrella to collect data and research and get as much stuff out as he can. But just like Wesker and the other one, he's also planning on taking that data and selling it to somebody else. Okay. And as part of the game, you develop an actual vaccine because you manage to, it's Jill or Carlos, one of the two manages to get in contact with the government, who, again, are planning on just fucking bombing the city and destroying it. But you say, there's still people here, we have data here, we can make a vaccine for this virus. And they say, if you could get a vaccine out, we won't bomb the city. One of the last things that happens is that Nikolay destroys the vaccine that you create in front of you. Because he's just like, I don't need that shit. That's not going to help me overall.
That doesn't help me.
It doesn't help me. So why the fuck would I want that out? And destroys it in front of you. So then it's like the last moments is you getting in a chopper and leaving the city in order to make
before it gets blown up.
Right before it gets blown up, because of course. Slight difference. You do not blow. You do kill the Nemesis.
Okay.
Towards the end of the game. Not with a rocket launcher. You pull out this giant fucking like rail gun that shoots huge beams of electricity straight at things, and you shove it into its mouth and watch it just go boom. It is a great final killing blow for a villain in the game. It is awesome. It is very, very satisfying. And yeah, you leave, the city blows up, and you vow to destroy Umbrella and take them down and expose them for their evil secrets. Right. As it is in pretty much every single fucking Resident Evil game.
Cool. So that's the first 3.
That is, well, those are the...
the first 3 main storyline games.
Yes. Well, and here's where it gets muddled, because there's also Resident Evil 0 that takes place before the events that happen in Resident Evil 1, where you follow the events of Rebecca Chambers, who's a member of the Bravo team that first went to Arclay Mountains, and you follow what happened with her before. I know. I told you already. Fine. It's already incredibly fucking muddled.
It's not that bad. It's not that Zelda did that.
Yeah, so far not that bad. Like, so far it's not needlessly complicated. It doesn't get really, really weird until you get to the stuff that has to go back to like what happened in the 60s with the original founders of Umbrella. So that's where it gets really complicated.
There's Resident Evil 0 and there's Resident Evil -1 is what you're saying.
Pretty much. Yeah. There is stuff that you find out in Village that just came out like, what, maybe a year and a half ago or something like that predates the shit that happened of what I just talked about. Wow. It gets so I love these games. I absolutely fucking love these games.
Resident Evil -pi.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and then it's like, it does that thing that I love and I don't love, where it's just kind of like, there's more background that you find into it, and at a certain point, it does get into, excuse me, I'm so sorry. It does start to get into that territory of like, all right, some of this is really, really cool and interesting. Some of this is like the definition of gilding the fucking lily, and like, we don't need it. We don't need all this here. Like, you get into stuff, like, I know it's a fan favorite, but when you get into stuff like Code Veronica and like the cloning that happens, it's like, we need to introduce cloning into all of this as well. Just like
on top of everything.
You know, the waters were already fucking muddy as is. Do we need to make it murkier?
Right.
But I don't know if this is where we want to sort of like stop for part 1.
I think
we're about there on time. So we'll probably do like another Filthy Casuals for our next episode.
Yeah.
But then
we'll come back for more.
Then come back to that, and I cannot wait to come back for more, because then we get to go into literally what is my personal favorite of the Resident Evil franchise, and what is commonly referred to as one of the best Resident Evil games that's ever been made. Also just got announced they are giving it the full remaster remake for it is Resident Evil 4. This is where, like what I talked about for the remakes for 2 and 3, where it goes into that, it goes away from the tank mechanics into that third person over the shoulder mechanics. It originally, in release of actual games, Resident Evil 4 was the first one to do that.
Okay.
To completely switch like the mechanics for the game and go like, we're no longer tank controls, we're no longer on a rail. You are in a third-person environment, and that is how you have to get through the game. And it's a return of a fan favorite, Leon Kennedy, from 2 into the series as well.
Nice.
And sort of starts the departure from relying very, very heavily on all the events that happened in 1 and 2. And it sort of starts a path where we can start to see like a very, very interesting direction that Resident Evil starts to go into, and then decides they don't want to do that, and they go back, and that's where shit gets fucking messy again. It's really weird. Like, everybody loved... It's so weird. Just to go into it a little bit at the end here. Literally everybody loved Resident Evil 4. There's not... As long as you're a fan of the series, there's nobody... I've not talked to anybody who thinks that Resident Evil 4 is not a good game. It's and it's just a great game in general. Outside of the franchise. It was the first Resident Evil game I ever played, without knowing the plot of anything else going on Resident Evil. And it's still one of my favorite games. Nice. But for some reason, like, right after that, they took, like, all the wrong lessons. Everything got very action-y. They, by the time you get to 6, they go back to the original, like, zombie shit and whatnot. And just, like, 4 took a very deep departure away from, like, the original, like, zombie shit and bioweapon terrorism stuff. And took a different direction to it. And it was really, really interesting to see it shift gears, but work really, really well. And so to watch it sort of like try to like deviate and go back to it was a little bit of a bummer. But then when we get to Biohazard and then Village, in my opinion, they course correct again and go like, okay, what is it that makes Resident Evil good? It's how terrifying it is. It's the monsters we create. Mm-hmm. And it is, the fun of a needlessly complicated story. Like, as much as we talk shit about all the time, it's like, I love how needlessly complex Kingdom Hearts is. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't need to be. Like, the plot doesn't need to be that complicated.
Right.
But part of me loves it.
Right.
Like, part of me appreciates that you were bold enough to be like, no, we're going to have a bunch of unnecessary shit that doesn't matter. And that's part of the fun for Resident Evil. It's like, we don't need to go back to the 60s to explain some of this stuff. Like, we were all cool with zombies and a virus. Like, we were all good.
It was fine.
But, like, fuck it. Why not? It has the virus has its origins in Africa and also somewhere in the middle of Europe. It's, just why not? Just fucking... Why not? Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is part 1 of this far of the Resident Evil timeline. I'm sure I fucked a lot of stuff up. People will definitely tell me.
We'll get the fact checkers
where I fucked up. I did my best. I have notes. I have a bunch of notes, but I was just like, I wanted to challenge myself and say like, can I get through at least a couple games without constantly referencing my notes and looking at stuff? And I think I actually did okay.
Yeah. I can't correct you. So
it's true. It's the perfect thing.
So you did perfectly.
Man, and it's crazy when like the elephants come in.
I would believe it.
Oh my god. No, there is a game where you fight a zombie elephant.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Thank you guys so much for listening to the first part of our breakdown of the timeline of Resident Evil. What are some of your favorite moments from the RE series, if you like it? Or also, what's just some of the weirdest crap that you enjoy about the game as well? Please let us know.
As always, if you have any ideas for future topics that we can discuss on the show, you can send us an email at 3VOpodcastteam@gmail.com and you can give us your ideas. You can also follow us everywhere at 3VO Podcast. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're everywhere. So go follow us. And as always, make sure you comment, like, and subscribe to the show. It really does make a difference, and we really do appreciate it. Until next time, bye.